According to smooth-talking, hustling defense attorney Johnny Cochran, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Those are probably the most famous, better yet, the only words we've ever really heard come out of that man's mouth that are immortalized in history. Now, what does that statement mean? Well, for those of you who are alive during the 90s and know enough about the world of stardom, celebrity, and scandal, it means the O.J. Simpson trial. Yes, what would most be referred to as, I don't know, cameras in court TV before we even had court TV. But why is it so important? What is the presence? What is the meaning? And why is it that 31 years later, when it comes to the O.J. Simpson trial, we always find a way to circle back to it? What does it say about the criminal justice system? What does it say about the world of celebrity? Well, on today's episode, we're going to dive deep, talk a little bit more about O.J. Simpson trial and how it shaped the world of true crime in media forever. So, let's get started. Hey folks, how y'all doing tonight? I'm Al Tassier, and welcome to another episode of Chatterbox. Joining me tonight is acclaimed podcaster and also a cult survivor, host of the true crime podcast, Crimes, Killers, Cults, and Beer. Welcome, Bill Selby. Bill, good to have you on the show.
How's it going, man?
Really good. It's been a little bit. I mean, last time we were talking, I was the guest on your podcast. So how does it feel being a guest for the first time in a while?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been a guest on somebody else's, but you know, I just love podcasting, so I'll do whatever.
Exactly. We do it for the love of the art. So you do a true crime podcast. It's not just all about the cults and everything like that.
Mm-mm.
And myself, well, I watch a lot more true crime than most people should be watching. And I'm sure you know just as well as I do that Netflix keeps spewing out more and more and more true crime documentaries. But the one that they keep circling back to is the ultimate true crime case, and I don't know why people can't get over it, but that is the infamous O.J. Simpson trial back in '94.
It's kind of, you know, he was a beloved star. Like Bill Cosby, for example, that's another one that's never going to go away.
Oh, definitely no.
And I know, because as a fan, I'm a lifelong fan of Bill Cosby. That hurt me when that came out. I'm just like, man, because I mean, if you go back and watch some of his comedy specials, they still hold up now. I mean,
oh yeah, he was a hysterical guy. He was so entertaining to watch, and then of course, like, the truth comes out and he just changed his image. I can't even fathom what his personality was like, but like just this transformation where the veil collapsed off of his face and we see a different side of him that one couldn't even fathom.
Yeah, I mean, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, say it ain't so. I didn't want to believe it, but I mean, it happened, and
I'm sure you're not the only one, but yes, so there's a great new mini doc series on Netflix, American Manhunt, the O.J. Simpson trial. I saw it with my wife. It was not the first O.J. Simpson doc I've seen. Probably the best one I ever saw was called O.J. Made in America, which really fabricated the background behind the whole civil rights movement and how it entangled into the O.J. Simpson trial itself. Now, look, this happened in '94. I was in a medically induced coma after having just been born. My mom was sick as a dog, and she told me this: the only thing I had to watch on TV when I was in the hospital was the O.J. Simpson trial. I wasn't seeing it. I mean, I was like getting drugs and stuff pumped into me and wasn't even like fully conscious under any circumstances. You were alive. Give me the details to our
I was 21
viewers who don't know much about it.
Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer, a proud card-carrying member, and but I was 21 when that happened, and you know, I was out at a bar with my when the chase happened, but when the news came out and everything, everybody's like, what the hell? It's not the juice, you know, I mean, and we're just kind of watching it and everything. And then all of a sudden I was out at a bar with a friend of mine, and they had TV on. Obviously, we were watching a band, so the sound wasn't on, but the caption across the bottom of it, like O.J. Simpson chase and all that stuff. There was a shitload of us that were gathered around the TV there, not even paying attention to the band, even though we couldn't hear what was being said. We're just watching it, and we're going, "What the hell is going on here?" And then, I got home that night, and I turned on the TV, and obviously they're still talking about it. And that was one of the first viral cases. I think Michael Jackson was probably the first one, but maybe not, no. Actually, I think it was OJ. I think OJ was the first one where it just went viral live, and everybody in the world was watching it. And it's just like, when the details about the Al Cowling and how he was on the phone with everybody, they played the sound clips from that and everything. We're like, what? It was weird. And then, to find out that he did what he did and everything, it was just like, could OJ have done that? But what that really was the first, in my opinion, it was the first recorded incident of CTE type violence, because a normal person isn't just going to just blow up like that and just go nuts. I mean, it happened with Chris Benoit. That's ultimately, I think, what happened to OJ and what caused him to snap. But it was, but the story wasn't over after the verdict, obviously, and it just kept getting weirder and weirder and weirder. He releases this book that says, in small font, and then I did it, and here's how it went down, And it's I didn't read the book. I might now, to be honest with you, just out of curiosity. Now that he's dead, but if you ask me, that's a confession. I mean, it wasn't fiction. That was confession, and he. And all he had to say was, "No, I'm just writing fiction. Telling you how I would have done it if I had done it." But no.
Well, even in his older years, he was doing a lot of blow. So I mean, he was definitely drugged up and stuff. Yeah, and here's the thing: he actually, behind closed doors, confessed to people within his inner circle who he knew personally that, yeah, I did it. And the way he kind of explained it to them was in this very nonchalant way that basically says, yeah, I murdered her, but I don't give a fuck about it. It happened, right, and I got away with it. So that definitely says something about his perspective. Like, were you originally, as I like to put it, a non-believer when all of this went down?
I believe that he did it. To be honest with you, I didn't think that it was a frame job or anything like that. I thought he did it. Although, interestingly enough, and I wish this just came to me. There was a serial killer active at that point in there was several of them that were active at that point in Los Angeles. But there was a serial killer that was actually being looked at for this murder, possibly. I wish, God,
really, I did not know that.
Yeah, if you give me a minute, I'll bring it up.
Was this the Night Stalker?
No, it wasn't Richard Ramirez. That was
Ramirez
before him.
Okay. Because I believe he was still pretty active even in '94. He wasn't?
No, he went down in the '80s.
Oh, okay. I'm definitely getting time mixed up. That's for sure.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is from CNN. It says, serial killer, not OJ, killed Simpson and Goldman. A death row inmate told relatives and a criminal profiler that he killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman while OJ Simpson waited nearby. And this was in a documentary. Simpson was tried. It was Glenn Rogers. He had been sentenced to death for murdering women in Florida and in California and was arrested in 1995, a month after the trial, OJ's trial ended. And he was charged with killing 5 women in several states. He told investigators at the time that he had killed at least 70 women. He says, I'm absolutely certain that my brother Glenn killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman, said Clay Rogers, who narrated the film My Brother the Serial Killer, which debuted on Investigation Discovery. And I know my brother did it because I've seen proof that he was there. But this isn't, and I just got the pop-ups telling me I gotta subscribe to CNN in order to keep reading.
I hate it when they do that. I really
Yeah.
hate news broadcasting when it does that. Well, here's the thing, and I recommend you see it. It's called American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson. In it, they reveal a lot of evidence that was never presented at the trial. And I get it that OJ had the dream team of lawyers to
Yeah.
back him up and everything, but had this evidence been presented, like they had kind of, I guess one might say, the kit he was using to murder them, as well as a disguise he was going to wear when he skipped country and stuff like that, I'm 100% certain, had that been presented at trial, there's no way that his lawyers could have gotten him out of it. Like, no way whatsoever.
No.
It didn't matter how much money he was putting in their pockets, didn't matter their opinions, their perception of the American media, and how people were scrutinizing them just as much as him. Yeah.
But you see, I don't buy the serial killer aspect of it. Glenn Rogers or whatever his name was. I don't buy that. What that is to me is a serial killer confessing, like a Henry Lee Lucas type of thing. Especially with this guy claiming that he killed 70 people. You know, I mean, this is just a killer, and then you've got the brother. And I'm just speculating here because I haven't seen the documentary. I don't know if the brother actually believed his brother or not, or if he was just capitalizing on it. But that's likely what it was. And he and no, a serial killer did not kill Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. O.J. Simpson did.
Oh, definitely. And if I've seen plenty of like docs and interviews with serial killers where they kind of talk about their dastardly deeds. Like Ted Bundy claimed he killed about 100-something women.
Yeah.
And frankly, if we really reflect on serial killers and how narcissistic and ego-driven they are, you can tell that they're lying through their teeth. They're bullshitting you just to hype up this persona, this image they've created. I mean, it's not exactly a great image to have and stuff like that.
No, but if you're gonna be on death row, you might as well be the baddest mofo on the block, you know.
Never thought about it that way. I mean, yeah, I guess so. I guess there is an image to keep when you're on death row. Which one of us is the most disgusting, evil bastard here?
But there's a difference between people like that. Those are the ones that are flamboyant and media-driven and stuff like that, that want the infamy and everything. You've got people like Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. You've got, well, this guy Rogers that we were just talking about. I mean, there's Ted Bundy. There's a whole slew of them that just want to beef their infamy and everything. But then you've got others that just want to keep it, you know, I did what I did and that's all I did type of thing. Yeah. Or maybe they did more that they didn't get caught. And they're like BTK, for example. I know for a fact that he killed at least 2 more women that he never got charged for because they could never prove it. Although new evidence is coming forth that place him there at the time. You know, one was in Oklahoma and one was in Missouri. And he's not going to confess to those because Missouri and Oklahoma have the death penalty. And he's a coward. He's afraid to die. So there's so many different types of serial killers that you know it's just all, you know. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, there's a book out, and I interviewed its author about the possibility that Jeffrey Dahmer killed Adam Walsh and not Otis Toole. Otis Toole claimed that one, but this guy wrote a huge book detailing everything that he did to because he was in the mall the day that Adam Walsh was taken, and he had an encounter. He had a run-in with Jeffrey Dahmer. So he wrote this book, and at first I didn't believe it, but after reading that book, I'm about 90% sure, positive that Dahmer did kill Adam Walsh. So
the thing about Dahmer is that it was very difficult to pull the truth out of him. And when I say pull the truth out of him, I've seen the Stone Phillips interview multiple times. Kind of what they were looking for was any essence of regret that he may have had. And I've told people this before. If you watch the Stone Phillips interview, as we all know, Dahmer was a sociopath. Even in court, when people were screaming and begging to strangle him or cut his throat, he displayed no emotion whatsoever. But if you look very closely at his eyes and how they move and how he squints and stuff, That's the emotion. That's how you are able to read what kind of emotions are pulsating through his mind, or were. I mean, he got bludgeoned to death in prison.
Yeah, but with Simpson is one of these people. Now Simpson, I don't put him in the same category as like Henry Lee Lucas or Ted Bundy or any of these other people that inflate their stuff. I don't put him in that, because he's saying he's saying that he didn't do it, but he in a lot of ways he's the exact opposite of them, where he's going to say, yeah, look what I did, or look what, I didn't do it, and blah blah blah. And plus he had been found innocent, so the only thing they can do is bring civil charges against him, and if he's broke, you can't get blood from a turnip. So
No.
so he could do whatever the hell he wanted, and and he got away with murder.
I refer to the O.J. Simpson trial as reality TV before we even had reality TV.
That's exactly what it was.
The entire country was watching it nonstop, day in and day out, until they said, we, the jury, have declared that you, Orenthal J. Simpson, are not guilty of the murder of Nicole Brown. And yeah.
Have you seen the Saturday Night Live skits that they did about the trial?
No, but I did hear that they were doing a few when he was on trial.
They were hilarious. Oh my God, I'm sure you can find them all on YouTube. They were that was when Saturday Night Live had the best lineup that they ever had. Adam Sandler, David Spade, Dana Carvey, Tim Meadows.
The golden age.
Tim Meadows. Yeah, I mean,
golden age. The 80s and the 90s was definitely the golden age of SNL. I mean, I'm not saying SNL is bad now, but it doesn't have the same vibe that it had back in the good old days, back when you had guys like Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, etc., etc.
But they get it. They do funny stuff every now and then, but normally these days it's just boring.
Yeah, I don't want to say that they try to like repeat themselves on SNL these days, but I do feel like they are lacking a certain level of fresh material.
Well, I mean, that's been a thing for well over 50 years. That show's older than I am.
So true, yes. Yeah. Here's the thing also about the O.J. Simpson trial, and you can learn about this if you watch the documentary O.J. Made in America. One of the jurors was asked about like the decision, the verdict and stuff, and they, as you know, that prior to O.J. Simpson, the big heat between the LAPD and the African-American community was the Rodney King beating in 93, and how a bunch of cops got away with brutal assault, and then next thing you know, LA's on fire nonstop for days and days on end.
Remember that too.
And they asked, like, was O.J. Simpson revenge for Rodney King? And she said, yes. So
see, she should have been arrested right there on the spot.
She confessed to this 30 years later. She confessed to this 30 years later.
Statute of limitations, probably.
Yeah, and also, I mean, OJ was dead at that point, so there's nothing really holding it up. But here's the thing, and I've talked to people about this. I understand completely. Do I agree with it? No. He committed murder. Murder is murder, and he's guilty in my book.
Murder's bad and good.
But I completely understand why. It was the perfect fuck you middle finger to the American justice system one could possibly give. You are letting a renowned celebrity, the juice of all people, who could run. I mean, I think his most famous run was just in that Ford Bronco going down the streets of LA. That was better than any football movie made. But you've got like a guy who is top of the world celebrity, Naked Gun,
he was
Hall
great.
of Famer.
He was great in Naked Gun. Naked Gun.
You let him get away. You let him get away with murder. And the LAPD is shamed for life. So I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
Got a little funny story regarding the Rodney King.
Okay, sure. We want to hear.
I'm a truck driver, and at the time, when I first started, I was working for a company that has team drivers, and I became a trainer. And I had this one guy, I had this student with me, who was actually probably about 10 years older than me, and we were in South Central LA, doing making a delivery, and we come across this. I'm familiar with the area. I know where Reginald Denny was pulled out of his truck and beaten. Yeah, and we were probably about maybe 3 or 4 blocks from that intersection. And and so we come across this, this scene. This scene, we're going down these side roads trying to get to this distribution center that we're going to, and we see this man and woman fighting, and he's like beating the crap out of her and stuff like that. And my student says to me, "Should we stop and help?" I said, "Do you want to get shot?" I said, "Because that's how you get shot." He's like, "Well, he's beating her up." I said, "Yeah, but if we get stop and help, number one, there could be 5 people in that house that are going to come out and kill us and then steal our truck." I said, "Do you know where we are?" He's like, "We're in L.A." I said, "We're in South Central L.A., about 4 blocks away from where Reginald Denny was pulled out of his truck during the L.A. riots and beaten." He's like, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, don't." I said, "Yeah, you're a good person. You want to help, but I guarantee you, if we were to stop." We had passed it by then. I said, "I guarantee you, if we were to stop right then and there to help, neither one of us would have made it out of there alive."
Damn, I've never been to LA, but I've actually been told don't go. That it's not as glorious as it used to be.
Oh, it's not.
I mean, I can understand, like, turn back the clock to like the 70s and stuff. It was definitely phenomenal. It was the place. But from the people I've met, they're like, nope, absolutely not. You do not want to be out there.
South Central LA has always been, a really bad area. I mean, and the LA riots weren't even the first riots that happened there. There was the Watts riots back in the 60s that happened there.
Yeah. One thing that I really find kind of depressing, disturbing, and just an absolute disappointment to society is when you think about the Watts riots, the LA riots, and of course, Black Lives Matter movement. History is consistently repeating itself, and LA is a big center point of it all. Because, I mean, obviously, like, I'm 30 years old, so it's not like I was that old when George Floyd was murdered by that police officer, and seeing the aftermath of it all. There was actually a guy I worked with, he lived in LA, and he said, like, it was almost like they were burning down the city.
Yeah.
Is the best way he described it. The whole place was absolute anarchy, and I remember seeing the images of Philadelphia. Philadelphia was on fire.
Lots of cities were on fire.
Yes. And, I mean, because I don't love to get into the politics of it, but here's the thing, I don't want to say they should have all gotten away with what they were doing.
Well, look at historically what the black community has been through. You've got,
definitely.
I'm not condoning violence or anything, but I get it. It's like, if there's a black man walking down the street and everything, he's more likely to get stopped, and bugged by a police officer for no reason than you or me. And that's just the truth. It sucks, but I get it. I get where the anger is coming from. I mean, I can't say I can relate to it because I can't, but I understand, and until something is done about it. I mean, race relations are a hell of a lot better now than they were, say, 50 years ago. But there's still a long way to go on it, to get it right.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree. And I mean, like, what was it? When another thing, circling back to OJ, is that when he, the day they said, like, he's not guilty and stuff like that, they had basically an army of police and state troopers all outside of the courthouse, because they were terrified to death that if he was deemed guilty, that it would spiral to an LA riot, the LA riots times 50.
I don't know if that would have happened, honestly.
Neither do I, but I can definitely tell that there would have been a lot of anger and frustration. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely, but I don't think they would have. It was too soon after the LA riots. They weren't going to do that. I don't think they would have done that again. But I mean, we don't know, and I'm kind of glad that we don't know, because I mean, the LA riots. I mean, I've heard this story about on a podcast about Tupac. He was right there in the thick of it and everything. I mean, there was an account that he told before he, early on in his career before he was killed, about an experience that he had in there. And I don't remember what it was, but I mean, he wasn't participating; he was defending himself. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's just and it sucks. I mean, it's just I mean. Yeah, I mean, but I can definitely see where the police thought that something like that might have happened again if OJ had been found, if he had been found guilty. But I don't think it would have happened. But who am I?
Neither do I. And another thing about OJ is that, and this is something that I have I have very mixed thoughts and opinions about it, because it says a lot about the kind of personality cult he built up around himself. OJ was once asked, and this was actually his answer to a lot of people. They were like, how does it feel being a black man in Los Angeles? And he would say, oh, I'm not black, I'm OJ. That says something. That says something, in my opinion.
Well, he did transcend the racial barrier and everything. He did transcend that. He was loved by both black and white audiences and stuff like that. I mean, take the Naked Gun movies, for example.
Yes, of course, definitely. I know, but at the same time, that really says something in regards to, for me, it strikes it as a very egotistical comment to say.
Sure,
kind of like, I'm better than anyone just by saying I'm OJ. Like, doesn't that strike you as kind of just an ego-driven comment?
Definitely, but that's the personality that he had. I mean, he was just, I followed him on Twitter. I mean, he was constantly, doing stuff like, like really funny stuff like that. And his Twitter page is still active.
Really?
Yeah. So, and he's got all these videos, and I didn't watch it, like everything that he put out or anything like that. I'd watch it every now and then, and he was funny. He was a good Twitter follow. But I mean, I checked it last night to see if it was still active, and it's still there.
My best guess is that his children still keep it active so that he can be remembered, per se, even though he's not exactly remembered in the most beloved way that I'm sure he envisioned himself.
Not even in the last years of his life. I mean, he got arrested in Las Vegas for beating up some guy over memorabilia of his.
Yeah, and that was, I remember when that happened, and my mom was like telling me, like, yeah, she was actually kind of thrilled, I think is the way of putting it. She's like, he got away with murder back in '94. Now they're finally putting the cuffs on him.
Yeah, but it was released.
Yes, yeah. I didn't even. Here's the thing, because I didn't follow the guy all that well. I didn't even know he had been released. When I found out that he had died, my wife and I, we thought he had died in prison. We did not know he was a free man.
Yeah, I mean, if you check out his Twitter page, one of the he died last year, I think.
Yes, it was last year.
There's pictures of him at a Buffalo Bills game in the stands. There's video of him that he took from a Bills game last season.
How do you think the fans responded to that, seeing OJ at a Buffalo Bills game?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question. I mean, is he loyalty? I mean, or is he royalty to them? I don't know. I mean, if Ray Finkel was an actual, real person, me as a Dolphins fan, I wonder what I would think about him. But Ray Finkel was basically Scott Norwood in a movie. The Buffalo Bills kicker that shanked, the wide left or the wide right field goal in the Super Bowl that lost it for him. And the Ace Ventura Pet Detective movie, the Ray Finkel character was basically an embodiment of that. So he probably wouldn't have been. I can't think of any other Dolphins players that have really done anything crazy like that. I mean, he's not like Aaron Hernandez or Ray Caruth or whatever. So the Dolphins suck, but at least they don't have somebody infamous like that that I know of. There might be one. I don't know.
What was it? I'm sure you know a lot about the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, which also got turned into a Netflix special. That has been being defined now as the O.J. Simpson trial of my generation, even though most millennials were alive. And when I say alive, we were like 1 to 3 years old when when OJ was on trial. Like, in regards to the gross animosity, the extremity, and the public eye glued to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that's kind of why we've now defined it as the OJ Simpson trial of our generation.
I don't know much about that, I'll be honest with you. And I mean, I know they had a toxic relationship. I know she took a shit on his bed, and that's about all I know about it. I mean, I got to the point now. I reached the point probably about 15, 20 years ago where I really do not give a shit about celebrities and their lives. I don't care, because it affects me. It doesn't affect me at all. It doesn't affect my life at all.
Same.
You know, and you got, you know, so when that came out, I mean, yeah, I was aware of it, but I didn't follow it. I don't follow any of that stuff anymore. I mean, you know, it's like, you know,
well, I am a diehard Johnny Depp fan, so
well, I like Johnny Depp, not as a guitar player, but as an actor.
One of my nicknames is actually the guy who looks like 30-year-old Johnny Depp, because
You do
people
kinda.
look at. Yeah, that's one of my nicknames, is the guy who looks like 30-year-old Johnny Depp when I'm at work at the hospital. If people are like need help from me, I'll tell them this: hey, just tell them I look for the guy who looks like Johnny Depp when he was 30 years old in Platoon. And people are like, okay, that seems pretty
Yeah, I can see it.
and understandable to recognize. And now, of course, we've seen his daughter, fast forward, also performing alongside Willem Dafoe in Nosferatu.
I haven't seen that movie, and I heard it was awful.
It was very interesting. It was good. I liked it. I'm a horror fanatic.
Oh, I am too, but I heard that movie was just really slow and boring. And
It definitely had a pace to it. That is a fact. It had a pace to it, I can promise you. Yes. Because and the thing is, when they talked about like the Depp Heard trial being like the OJ Simpson trial of my generation, is this. They were really questioning. So social media had a massive influence on the trial, the outcome, what the lawyers were saying, what the jury's opinions were. And they were kind of circling back. Had Facebook, Instagram, Twitter existed in 94, what do we think the outcome or the verdict would have been?
that's a good question. I don't know. Probably would have been the same.
Yeah, so do I. I definitely agree with that. I mean, and if you look back at the footage from the trial and everything, and the massive crowds of people outside the courthouse, the fact that every other person in America was watching it every single day, with the amount of loyalty and fan base that OJ had, as you said, on both sides, I don't think they would have even needed social media back then under any circumstances. Frankly, I think that would have just actually ruined the amusement surrounding the case, because it was a real circus.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Now, there was a term that came out of the trial. It says, and it was called the Chewbacca defense.
The Chewbacca defense.
Yeah, and the Chewbacca defense is a legal strategy in which a criminal defense lawyer tries to confuse the jury rather than refute the case of the prosecutor. It's an intentional distraction or obfuscation. I've never seen that word before in my life. But as a Chewbacca defense distracts and misleads, it's an example of a red herring. It's also made an example of irrelevant conclusion, a type of informal fallacy in which making an argument fails to address the issue in question. Often, opposing counsel can legally object to such arguments by declaring them irrelevant, character evidence, or argumentative.
That makes a lot of sense, because if you look back at the trial and stuff, the amount of evidence that wasn't even presented in the courtroom, and how they basically twisted it so drastically, like the whole racist detective thing, and used that, like, fueled the fire with that, it definitely makes sense.
But the origin of being called the Chewbacca defense came from South Park.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That does not make sense, because when I think Chewbacca, I think Wookiee and Han Solo.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the episode, the character of Chef contacts a major record company executive seeking to have his name credited as the composer of a fictional Alanis Morissette song called Stinky Bridges. Chef's claim is substantiated by a 20-year-old recording of Chef performing the song. The record company refuses and hires Johnny Cochran, who files a lawsuit against chef for harassment. And in court, Cochran refers to this famous Chewbacca defense in which he used during the O.J. Simpson trial. According to Chef's lawyer, Gerald Broflowski, although Broflowski uses the logic, reasoning, and the fact that the chef properly copyrighted his work, Cochran counters with the following. I mean, okay, I'm just going to there's like script from the episode. Cochran, I have one thing I want you to consider. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chewbacca. Chewbacca is a Wookiee from the planet Kashyyyk. But Chewbacca lives on the planet Endor. Now think about that. That does not make sense. And then Broflowski says, darn it, he's using the Chewbacca defense. Then he goes on, why would a Wookiee, an 8-foot-tall Wookiee, want to live on Endor with a bunch of 2-foot-tall Ewoks? That does not make sense. But more important, you have to ask yourself, what does this have to do with the case? Nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, it has nothing to do with this case, and it does not make sense. Look at me. I'm a lawyer defending a major record company, and I'm talking about Chewbacca. Does that make sense? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not making any sense right now. None of this makes sense. And so you have to remember that when you're in the jury room deliberating and conjugating the Emancipation Proclamation, does that not make sense? No, ladies and gentlemen of the supposed jury, it does not make sense. If Chewbacca lived at Endor, you must acquit. The defense rests.
If the glove don't fit, you should have quit.
Yeah.
That's
and
typically the only thing, the only iconic line that immediately comes to
Oh yeah,
mind
if the glove don't
whenever-
fit, you must quit. And of course there was that whole issue with, his hand had been swollen or whatever because he had been sick, so therefore the glove
It had
didn't
to
fit.
do with he had arthritis, like he
Yeah.
had to take his arthritis meds. I'm like, seriously? That's when it really turned into an absolute circus show, like him
Yeah.
just pretending to put on the gloves and like waving his hands fanatically and stuff. Or some of the shit that his defense attorneys said, like what was like, how about that, Mr. I can't even remember the guy's name. Like I said, this was reality TV before we had reality TV.
Yeah, and there was this the Saturday Night Live skit that was made after that South Park episode, so obviously many years after the trial, but it was going back to that. There's speculation on whether or not Johnny Cochran is going to use a Chewbacca defense. And so they're in the courtroom and everything, and all of a sudden, reporters are like, okay, is he going to do it? Johnny Cochran's character, the actor playing Johnny Cochran gets up, oh my god, he's using the Chewbacca defense!
Yes, that's it. Typically, I think the Chewbacca defense would be you'd walk up to the attorney you're really pissed at or the judge and just rip their arms off. Isn't that the best form of Chewbacca defense one can come up with?
Yeah, because Wookiees are known to do that when they lose.
Oh, yes, definitely. Very much so, yeah. What is it? One thing that still baffles me is this. So most of O.J. Simpson's defense team is deceased, unfortunately. I am going to say God rest their souls because they were great lawyers, even though they let him get away with what he did. But one of them who's still alive, still, to this day, backs up O.J. 100%. That's got to say that I don't get that.
Yeah, and if anything, on top of the fact that O.J. Simpson committed murder and got away with it, we also have to be pissed off at him for giving us the fucking Kardashians.
Oh, definitely. Like, I can't keep up with the Kardashians because they're way too fast on the amount of drama they've stirred up in this world, especially in the world of amusement and entertainment. And frankly, I think they're overrated.
Oh, yes, definitely. I've never seen an episode.
Neither have I. I mean, I've seen clips, but I've never seen like an actual episode. I really cannot keep up with the amount of drama and chaos. The only thing that I think is kind of most amusing about them is how they always find ways to, for the most strange, morbid reasons, pull themselves into the spotlight. Whether it be Caitlyn Jenner, like we all know what a performance they've put on.
Yeah, well, there was this. I did watch about the only thing on Netflix that I've watched about regarding O.J. Simpson was The People versus O.J. Simpson.
Yep, heard of it.
It was really good. I mean, it was like it wasn't a documentary. It was just basically a mini series that they made about the trial. and it was really good. I mean, you know, David Schwimmer played the Kardashian attorney, and I mean, it was really good.
I can imagine. David Schwimmer's really good. He's a good actor. He doesn't get the amount of props he deserves. I mean, because most of the time we just think about Roz from.
Well, he's an introvert.
Yeah,
he really is. He's an introvert. I mean, there's nothing wrong.
Supposed to be he almost was in Men in Black, believe it or not.
That wouldn't have worked.
No, I totally agree. He feels like deeply that he missed out on that. I'm like, and I think about it when I read the article.
If he had been, like, if he, I'm assuming he would have been Will Smith's character.
Yes.
Now, if he had been in there, Men in Black would have been one and done.
I agree. I totally agree. Like Will Smith, I mean, he's taken a few slaps in the face from the paparazzi. No pun intended. But he brings the movie to life. That's just the glory of his character. I can't see David Schwimmer doing that under any circumstances. He doesn't have the same charisma.
I'm enjoying this. This is fun.
Yes, I try to. I always try to balance it out. I don't like doing the same thing twice, but I always like to focus on the media. I like to focus on the stuff the media is putting out, and I'm not just one to stick with movie reviews or opinions. I focus on documentaries, what's new on Netflix, why streaming services are so addictive, and stuff like that. How literature plays a role in media and entertainment, etc., etc. Just being a true crime kind of addict and fan, I needed to do a true crime episode, and I had just watched that documentary and another one prior to that with my wife about O.J. Simpson. I'm like, you know what? The juice needs to be loose one last time.
Notice the color of my filter. That was intentional.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Especially after the Bills got screwed out of the Super Bowl, and
I didn't watch the Super Bowl under any circumstances.
I did, and I'm glad I did. I was gonna sit it out. You know, we're off topic here. You know, I was gonna sit it out like everybody else, but my next door neighbor was, you know, he's been working on my car because my car's broke down right now, and he wanted to watch it. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm watching it. I mean, because he's doing a really good, you know, he's got me a really good, you know, deal on it and whatnot. So he wanted to watch it, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm having a Super Bowl party at my house. So, but I'm really glad that I did, because the Chiefs just got their asses handed to them. I usually don't like blowouts in Super Bowl, but this was so satisfying after all the Chiefs bullshit that we've been subjected to. The Chiefs been being, you know, like getting favorable calls left and right and all that stuff. I mean, it was just, and the fact that Tom Brady was one of the commentators, oh, that just made it so much sweeter.
Yes. No, I love Brady.
I'm glad I watched it, and I bet that the first quarter had like super low ratings. But as people started finding out that the Chiefs were getting their asses handed to them, more people probably started tuning in.
Yes, I can definitely fathom. We typically have a lot of sports gossip where I work, so I'm sure I'm going to be hearing a lot about it tomorrow when I go to work and stuff like that. I mean, I can remember probably one of the most interesting sports moments at my job was we had a patient who was screaming because they wanted to go back to their room. But of course, it was the NBA playoff game with the Celtics. So me and all my coworkers were cramped tight in that CT scanning room with our eyes glued to a iPad watching the end of the game and completely ignoring the patient who's like, hey, get me back to my room. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, shut the fuck up, pal. This is history in the making. You can wait.
But it was so great. They showed Chiefs players on the sidelines literally crying.
Oh my, seriously?
Yes. And I'm sitting there, like I was off today, and I was having fun today, you know, nursing my hangover, and just going, you know, just like being relentless to all these Chiefs fans on Facebook and everything, just giving it right fucking back to them, because they were so. That's what happens when you don't have the refs, spoon feeding you the game. And Buffalo, if Buffalo had been there, it would have been a more interesting Super Bowl. But
I can imagine, I'm sure.
But because it was the Chiefs getting decimated, I loved it. I watched every minute of that, and I wasn't even care. I wanted them to drop 50 on the Chiefs.
Yes, I heard a lot that it was definitely an amusing game. I would not
Mhm.
expect people to be crying, though. I'm like, seriously, it's not like the end of the world or anything like that. I get it that you guys worship football the same way some people worship Jesus, but at the same time, give me a break. Hold in the emotions.
Yeah, I mean, Chiefs player. There's this one photo that's circulating around Facebook and everything, and it's got this Chiefs player like on the sideline bawling, and another Chief. He's sitting on the bench, and another player is like leaning down and has got his arm around him.
Mm. Yes. Sometimes I feel like, I mean, I like going to a Red Sox game or a Bruins game and stuff like that. It's always a good time, a lot of high energy in the atmosphere and stuff like that. But sometimes I think to myself, what was it like back in the day before like TV was dominating sports, before you had constant commentators, before you had this insane celebrity hype surrounding it? Was it better then than it is now?
I think the game is better because the
Yeah.
athletes are faster, and there's no denying that they are faster. And but but then again, I got to see Dan Marino, John Elway, and even Joe Montana in person live. Like at the game. So, I mean, I didn't get to see Brady though, which is crazy that I never made it to a Dolphins Patriots game in 20 freaking years.
Trust me, like up here, he is worshipped as a god.
No team beat the Patriots more than the Dolphins did. But it's just, I mean, looking back, I don't hate Brady anymore. I mean, when he became a Buck, I mean, that's my number 2 team. That was my dad's team.
Yeah,
So-
no, like we do consider him having been a bit of a traitor per se, but the funny thing is that when the Buccaneers came up north to play at Gillette, they're like, Brady's back in town. Ticket prices skyrocketed tenfold. You were looking at about $1,000 for the nosebleeds, actually. And I have a friend who's a diehard Pats fan. He almost was willing to pay $1,000 for a nosebleed seat just to see Brady because he was in town.
But the Bucks stomped the Patriots.
I get that. I totally get that. I know. Hence why we consider him to be a traitor.
It wasn't his fault. They were basically wanting him to rework his contract, and
Yeah, they were just waving more money in his face.
And so I'm surprised he went to the Bucks though. I mean, I knew he was going to go somewhere else, but I didn't see him coming. I didn't see him coming to the Bucks. That kind of shocked me. But
I'm surprised that he finally retired.
yeah, no kidding.
A
But at
lot of
least
people were like, he's not going to retire. He's not going to retire. And I'm like, finally. Because I'm not saying like we miss him on the field or anything like that. I mean, Brady is bigger than OJ in my honest opinion.
Definitely.
1,000 times bigger. Yeah, OJ had the speed and everything, but he got famous for murdering his wife. Brady got famous because
he was the first player to go to rush for over 2,000 yards, and that was back when they had 14-game seasons.
Yes, I know, the Rush, the legendary Rush. But when I think of the Rush, I think it was more amusing seeing him speeding down the freeway in a white Bronco. That was the Rush to avoid rush hour traffic and the law.
Yeah.
Most definitely, yeah.
But he moved down to, like, after he was released, he moved to, I think, West Palm Beach.
Yes, I remember seeing that was in Florida, and people say that he was partying like he was in his 20s.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he knew that he had that he was on borrowed time, and he was just making the most out of, he was just living large because he could.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think he definitely was. It was evident to him that he had no real chance of coming back. Like, the damage was done to his reputation.
Right.
So my honest opinion is that he probably figured out, you know what, I only got so much time left on this earth. I'm not getting famous again. I'm not making another Naked Gun film because my co-partner is already deceased. So you know what, I'm just going to get as high
Leslie Nielsen
on life
died?
as I can. What?
Leslie Nielsen died?
Yeah, I believe Leslie Nielsen died. I don't think he's alive anymore.
Oh, hold on. I gotta.
Well, he's not as famous anymore as he used to be.
I'm pretty
That's a
sure.
fact.
I'm pretty sure. No, if he's still alive and they made another Naked Gun movie,
Well,
it would.
obviously, but I mean, I don't think Leslie Nielsen's alive anymore.
Hold on, I'm checking. Holy shit, he died back in 2010
Yep.
in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm serious. I didn't know that he died. I really didn't know that he died.
I hear a lot of gossip from time to time about what especially when it comes to the death of like great celebrities that we love, because everybody knows that when a comedian dies, it breaks our hearts tremendously and stuff like that. And now people are just scared because Dick Van Dyke is 99 years old, and I can't even fathom what it's going to be like when he goes away.
Well, he hasn't done anything in decades.
No, he hasn't.
I mean, well, but I mean, I can't remember the last thing that he did. But
I do.
What was the last
Mary
thing he did?
Poppins Returns. Yes, he was in the movie Mary Poppins Returns.
They made a sequel to Mary Poppins?
Yes,
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that.
Okay, fun fact. Time for some movie trivia and stuff like that. Some movie facts. So, Mary Poppins, timeless classic. I grew up with it. So many kids grew up with it. We absolutely adore it. P.L. Travers, the author of the book, was the biggest bitch one could possibly fathom. She was hated by everyone on set. They despised her with her bicker, critique, tough, sour attitude and stuff like that. She literally roasted the Sherman Brothers alive because she didn't like their music. She was like, "You're ruining my novel," and stuff like that. And when the movie was released, though it was a success to everybody who is a movie lover in general, she hated it more than anything else and literally stripped Disney of the rights to make another Mary Poppins movie, because Disney was considering making a sequel because there's more than one book.
Right.
And how it works is when they had to, I don't know why they were still so eager to make a sequel. Guess they felt they had to.
You got extras like me that didn't even know that the movie was made. So obviously it didn't do very well.
It was okay. It was okay. I mean, it wasn't like gold standard, but it was okay. Emily Blunt.
I didn't see the first Mary Poppins movie until I was a teenager.
Wow.
And
I grew up with that movie.
Well, there's a reason for that. It's because I was raised in a cult.
True. Very true. Yeah. So, yeah. Definitely makes sense. As well, I was in a theatrical cult, so we were always watching movies and stuff like that in our downtime.
I was in a religious cult. Movies were a sin.
God, I'll never understand what goes on in the minds of those narcissistic leaders.
I know that's why I probably have more cult episodes than any other podcast out there that's not specifically a cult podcast. I probably have more cult episodes than.
Yes, I would agree. I'll back you on that one.
I've probably got about 20. I've probably done like 25 of them. So
yeah, P.L. Travers had like an adopted son. They had to wait till not only she died, but also until he died to finally be able to remake the movie. And they ended up waiting. I can't believe they stuck it out. I believe it was 22 years. He finally kicks the bucket. And they were then granted the permission to make the sequel, and they made it with Emily Blunt. Julie Andrews did consider making a cameo in it, but denied the opportunity because she didn't want to steal. Didn't want to steal Emily Blunt's glory. And Dick Van Dyke was in the film. Again.
I didn't even know. I mean,
yes, yeah. I believe it. In my honest opinion, looking at it, that being part of his legacy, it was probably instrumental, because most of the people who were involved in the making of the movie are unfortunately long since deceased. So they needed somebody to, I guess, guide them through so that they could make the movie as grandiose and live up to its potential as possible.
Yeah.
Like, not break tradition.
Interesting.
Yes. And if you are interested in starting your own podcast, this is a shout out to all you media junkies out there and anybody listening in who wants to start their own podcast, you can do so using Riverside. And if you want to support this podcast and have a chance to be a guest on the show, you can follow me on Instagram at ATK Media or check me out on YouTube at Chatterbox94. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please listen in. Like, seriously, listen in. You're going to enjoy what I have to say.
I wish more people would stop making podcasts. I'm kidding.
We need them. It's a replacement for radio.
Well, it's just, I was being facetious.
Yeah, I know. Because I'm like, what do you think I listen to when I'm on the train headed to work every day? I'm either watching YouTube or listening to a podcast. We need the amusement.
Okay. People need to stop coming up with these new true crime podcasts.
Okay, I agree with you on that one. They do. They really do. We need to broaden our horizons in regards to content material. True crime has just gotten so popular and blown so out of proportion over the past few years. That's a fact.
Oh, I know. And I mean, and CKCB is, I'm still a little podcast, you know, but I mean, I'm coming up on 3 years, you know, and, I've got over 150 episodes, and I just, it's like, I kind of feel like if I had started this maybe 10 years ago instead of 3 years ago, it would be paying my bills now.
Most likely, probably. I think we all are like, when we get into the game, one thing that kind of races through our mind is money. But then we realize, wow, this wasn't going to be as much of an easy bite as I thought it would be.
Right. I mean,
there was a guy I knew who wanted to start a podcast to promote his landscaping business and stuff like that, and thought he could make a shit ton of money out of it.
Talking about landscaping?
What?
Talking about landscaping?
Yes, landscaping. I listened to one of his episodes. It was bad. It was a disappointment. It was really, really bad. Like, plus the guy gets enough attention and stuff like that. He's got multiple sponsors, like the Providence Friars, the Providence Bruins, and stuff like that. For me, it's like, dude, you're making enough money as it is. You got the publicity you need. I don't think you need to be spouting it out on a podcast and stuff like that. I'd be glad to promote you on my podcast, but you got to pay me to do that.
What is his, like, funny lawn care stud stories or whatever?
Not really. No, they're just trying to get publicity.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Basically,
so it's just like a anything goes type podcast where he plugs his business.
Anything goes advertising. It's that.
Okay. I mean that makes sense. But
yes,
but if the content isn't good, then
it was bad. It was definitely bad. It was not good content.
Can I plug something?
Sure.
This is a plug and an invite to you. I am starting another podcast. CKCV is not going away, but I'm starting another podcast called Forget the Date. It's where people come on and they tell their most humiliating, their worst, or their most hilarious date stories.
People are going to be itching to listen to that, that's for sure.
And I've already got 3 episodes recorded. I want to get 5 recorded, once in order to launch, but preferably more. But I mean, one of them is time sensitive. I kind of have a deadline because of the second episode, which I did with another podcast, and they're going to be releasing said episode. So, in like a week or two, a couple weeks. So I would like for Forget the Date to be released on my end at that time. But what I do is I pair people up. I like to bring in two guests. Whether they know each other or not, that's, whatever. I pair them up, and we just talk about it. We just talk about it and react and everything. And it doesn't just have to be one story. If you've got a couple of them, that's fine. You can tell them and whatnot. So, I would like to, officially on your podcast, invite you to be on my new podcast as a guest.
I am willing to be a guest on that podcast. I'm definitely going to have to, reflect a bit on my history and stuff in order to figure out what is the perfect story to tell.
Your wife could come on too. You guys could come on as a team.
I'll pitch it to her. I'll pitch it to her and see what she thinks and stuff like that.
So far, the people that have been on it have been like guests on CKCB before, and the reasoning for this is because, well, number one, I'm friends with all these people, and through podcasting and everything, and they're podcasters, so they know how to tell a story.
Yes,
so
that is what we do.
So that kind of sets. I don't want to get somebody on that's just like, well, we went out, he was broke, so I had to pay at the end. I don't want that.
No, you don't. You want to hear the juicy details.
Right.
Why was it so bad?
Right.
Why was it so good? What did you make out afterwards? Were you having sex in the back of his Volkswagen?
Right. So, and this is definitely an R-rated podcast. Well, CKCB is an R-rated podcast too. So
we already know that all true crime podcasts are R-rated.
Well, this one maybe a little more because just kind of. But the first episode, there was two women that I've had on in the past. They came on, and those two were friends from the get-go. I mean, they're buddies. They talk on Facebook all the time now. The second episode I did was with the two guys from Michael and Jeremy Steal Your Podcast. And they had stolen CKCB back in October, and I had them, I had them on. They were crashing in to steal Forget a Date because they had heard about this new podcast that was starting up. They come in, they realize it's me. I'm like, I'm not letting you steal my podcast. And then there was like a little standoff and everything, and I said, okay, I've got an idea. You need to steal a podcast. So like, yeah, I need an episode. I said, so how about you steal my podcast, and I am your guest on my podcast?
Okay, that's good. That's very good.
So we did it, and that episode was freaking crazy. And then the third episode that we did, I actually recorded that one the night before last. It was with another podcaster, Kevin from History Goon, which is he had a podcast, an old podcast, but that one kind of faded, so he's launching a new one. But also on that one was my original co-host Todd, my original co-host for CKCB.
Oh wow, and that must have been a bit of a good comeback.
It was. I mean, Todd and I are friends. I mean, we're not, just because he's not on the podcast anymore doesn't mean we're not friends anymore.
Yeah, I totally get that.
But it's great. I mean, I've got a couple other people slated to come on as well. It's just scheduling is difficult, especially when you're trying to bring in two people that don't know each other and everything. So, I mean, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And hosted by a true crime comedy podcast who is also a Gen Xer. How can you go wrong?
You can't. Well, anyway, folks, make sure to tune into Bill's podcast, tune into mine. Keep listening in wherever it is you get from, whether it be Spotify, Apple, or just YouTube. Until next time, folks, stay high on life. Out.
Later.